you, Harry, for that rendition of Sketchbook. You and your band knock it out of the park every time, and I thank you so much for opening up the Hugs Not Drugs podcast. Today's episode is episode 48, and the title is called Communication is the Key. The characters for today are me, Hugs Not Drugs. I'm doing the intro here, and I'm doing the outro. That's about all you'll hear from me. But there is the same voice as me, and that's John Barleycorn, and he represents experience, strength, and hope, and long-term recovery. Then there's John G., who's going to be the narrator, the educator, and he's going to provide a lot of wisdom. And, of course, we have Dr. Uggs, who represents mirth, mayhem, mischief, and comic relief. Here I am, Mr. Personality. All right. You know what? Why don't you just do the commercial, please? I thought you'd never ask. This podcast, the Hugs Not Drugs podcast, is sponsored by a prince of a guy, John Forlenza-Bailey. He's got these archetypes that go for him. The jester, the king, and the warrior. I wonder if you can ever figure that one out. Little brain teaser there. But let's get back to John Forlenza-Bailey. He sponsors the Road to Wellness workbook. That's a book that he wrote about 7 or 8 years ago for his private practice. And it had some very good success, and he thought maybe he should mainstream it and get mentors and people that need treatment on the cheap to do this workbook. So this workbook is designed to provide education, emotional support, and inspiration to persons suffering from addiction. And it offers step-by-step lessons for people striving to turn their lives around regarding abstinence, relapse prevention, family dynamics, and self-assessment to continue to discover self day by day. Recovery's up to you. Mentors help, journals help. You must exchange and surrender destructive behaviors for constructive ways of handling day-to-day stressors or triggers of life. No one deserves to continue to suffer from active addiction. Get better, do the work. Then last year he wrote this book called The Transformation of Dr. Uggs. It's actually my story. But, spoiler alert, I transform into Hugs Not Drugs. The Transformation of Dr. Uggs is an original fairy tale that explains the progression of the disease of chemical dependency. If you're educated and academic, you may want to call it an allegory, not a fairy tale. It is not intended to be a story about blaming others for the acquisition of an illness. This fairy tale is intended to explain, not to blame. It is a story of discovery, insight, acceptance, and finally the right choices to live drug-free if one is chemically dependent. That's about it. I finished the commercial in a timely manner, too. Thank you, Dr. Uggs. I'm going to hand it over to the characters in here again. As I mentioned, is John G. is going to be the narrator. Barleycorn is going to share his experience, strength, and hope and give a recovery point of view. And Dr. Uggs, as you hear, is going to be insulting everyone and their brother. Okay, so here we go.
Welcome, friends, to episode 48 of the Hugs Not Drugs podcast. Today's topic is one that can save friendships, strengthen families, improve recovery, and even prevent unnecessary suffering. And today's title is Communication is the Key. We're going to explore 4 styles of communication. First is passive communication. The second is aggressive communication. The third is passive-aggressive communication, and the fourth is assertive communication. We'll discover why assertive communication is considered the healthiest and most effective way to relate to other people. As we like to say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean. So let's begin. The study of communication styles developed primarily from psychology, counseling, and behavioral therapy, and philosophy. In the 1940s and 1950s, psychologists began examining how people express needs, feelings, and boundaries. Later in the 60s and 70s, researchers studying social skills and assertiveness training identified recurring communication patterns. psychologists such as Andrew Salter, Joseph Lowe, and Arnold Lazarus. They help popularize assertiveness training. Over time, 4 communication styles emerged as a practical way to understand how people interact. These styles are now commonly taught in these various forms of therapy, counseling, recovery programs, for our intents and purposes, primarily the 12-step recovery programs, but all recovery programs. DBT, which DBT is dialectric behavioral therapy, which is an outshoot of cognitive behavioral therapy. And the primary concepts of DBT, and I like the term dialectric because it teaches us what we often see in, like the saying in AA, you got to surrender to win. So it's this idea of acceptance of powerlessness, but needing to change. And dialectric would mean 2 opposing forces, and having an electrical background, it would be like, two seemingly opposed charges. So we have this need for change, but yet acceptance of where we are, acceptance of powerlessness and unmanageability, but also understanding the need for change. And so another style of commonly taught would be conflict resolution, leadership training, and couples counseling.
Wonderful, wonderful. You mean there are actually categories for strange things humans do when they refuse to say what they're feeling? I've been studying that for years. It's called Thanksgiving dinner. Hey, John G. Can you talk to us about passive communication for a while?
Well, sure. I mean, passive is, you could, when you see passive communication, it's like in a marriage relationship. You show me a couple that's never had a fight, and I'll show you somebody who's passive. Usually there's a dominant character, and people are just not afraid to respond. And passive communication is, we call, like, placating, avoiding the conflict. Yes, honey. Yes, honey. Yes, honey. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And the problem is that we can communicate in that way, but we're seething within. We're angry, we're fearful, we're not communicating what it is that we need to communicate, so that our own personal needs, as well as the needs of our partner, to be aware of our needs, are being met. So, in this case, people that are speaking passively, they struggle to express their needs. They seem to be an inability or fear about expressing their needs, their opinions, or their feelings. And they're people pleasers more often than not. They frequently put others first while neglecting themselves. Common thoughts like this would be, I don't want to upset anyone. My needs aren't important, and whatever you want is fine. So, so there's always this indecisiveness, unwillingness to be assertive in terms of expressing our own needs.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that, John Barleycorn?
Yeah. Thanks. A passive communicator might say something like, "That's okay," when inside they're thinking, "No, that's not okay at all." So they're doing a lot of opposite action when they're not saying what they mean, meaning what they say. It's very complicated and disturbing kinds of communication. I did that a lot before recovery. I wanted people to like me, so I'd swallow my resentment, and then I'd wonder why I felt miserable. Yeah, passive communication's easy. You say, "Whatever you want," and then spend 3 weeks complaining about it.
That's right. That's right. The problem with passive communication is the unexpressed feelings that don't disappear. That seething resentment, that cauldron of anger that's continually underneath. So what happens? We become resentful. We continue to feel the anger again and again and again. And then we have anxiety because we know it's going to happen again. That's been the pattern. We get depressed about it. We feel trapped, like there's no way out. And then we start setting emotional distance. Instead of confronting things and having a depth of communication, we just become avoidant.
Hey, John G., if you notice, I ain't that passive. Let's talk about one of my favorites, aggressive communication. What is that about?
Yeah, so, aggressive communicators, they often attempt to dominate, they control, they overpower, they instill fear and, and the common beliefs that they have. It's an arrogance kind of, it's my needs are more important than yours, and, winning is everything. I need to be right. And if I don't force my point, no one will listen. And that's why you can see aggressive communication is usually, the most, the loudest person in the room, most aggressive communicator. But in spite of all that volume, the reality is when you're in a group setting, they end up having the least weight because people can't see through that.
I'm getting all tingly inside. Oh, Barleycorn's got his hand up. Yeah, aggressive communication sounds like you're wrong. Do it my way. What's wrong with you? Before recovery, I was always passive. Sometimes, before, what am I trying to say here? Before recovery, I wasn't always passive. Boy, you made a mistake on that one. Stop being aggressive. Before recovery, I wasn't always passive. Sometimes I swung to the other extreme. I was very aggressive, and I thought louder may be smarter. It's not true. Yeah, I personally enjoy aggressive communication. My favorite phrase is, I'm not yelling, while yelling, and calm down, while waving my arms like a malfunctioning windmill.
Yeah, aggressive communication may create short-term compliance, but it often damages trust, safety, relationships. The aggressive communicator has the illusion control, but meanwhile, what they don't realize is that by not meeting the needs of others, that person could be either on their own or even conspiring with others to undermine what it is that you think you have with this illusion of a control. People may obey you, but they stop connecting.
Yeah.
There's a whip, there's a way, right? Hugs, not drugs.
Yeah. You're on my wavelength now. But here's the trickster form of communication, and I see a lot of recovering people just getting into their recovery and not saying what they mean, meaning what they say, and not saying it mean. And they're passive communications. Can you shed some light on what passive communication is?
Yeah, well, now we come to the trickiest style. This is the one where you don't know if you're on the corner or walk, don't walk. You got 1 foot off the curb in Midtown Manhattan, and that light starts blinking. Don't walk, and you got 9 seconds to get across Broadway. And so that is the trickiest style. Passive aggressive communication. This occurs when someone expresses anger indirectly. That sarcasm, that kind of snide comment, and you kind of might be, questioning whether or not they're telling the truth or not, and so instead of saying what's wrong, they communicate, by some kind of a sarcastic remark, like you'll be making a statement, and then you could say, oh, well, that's the way they'll say, well, this is what's going on, and then you could say something like, yeah, for a change, or in another way that passive aggressive people communicate is they procrastinate. They just put it off, or they'll withhold information, but usually it's the backhanded comments that you get. And then another one is you could have someone that's going from a passive style, not saying anything. Then they go to an aggressive style where they're trying to take control, like Dr. Uggs, I'm not yelling. And then, but then they go from not yelling to, crickets in the background. They give you the silent treatment. And that's a common one, because instead of being able to speak, and we'll get to assertiveness later, but instead of being honest, they go dead quiet and there's no communication. And the passive aggressive person believes that through silence they could control the communication and get their point across, which is a very ineffective way of communicating.
Yeah, I'm guilty as charged on this. Barleycorn here. I'm guilty as charged. I would include things like, I'm fine, when clearly I'm not. Or, no, go ahead, when I mean, please don't. Or my favorite is, I'm not mad, followed by a door slam and rattling the neighborhood.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I got some examples on that. Passive-aggressive communication is my specialty. Why have one argument when you can stretch it into 6 weeks?
Exactly, Dr. Ruggs. And when you tell me you're fine, I know you're really effed up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional.
Oh, he's got jokes today. I see. All right.
So the problem is that passive-aggressive communication creates confusion, right? If we can't dazzle them with our brilliance, we baffle them with and nobody knows exactly what's happening. Everybody feels tension. Nobody talks honestly, and especially in recovery, we take these communication styles, and it's just not going to work for us. Recovery thrives on clarity.
Yeah, well,
aggressive. That thrives on confusion. Let's have some chaos.
John,
Dr. Brooks, I know you love chaos.
John G., you're reading my mind, for goodness sake. You're clairvoyant. Or Clarabelle, I don't know what it is. But I don't even want to talk about the way to fix all this, but that's assertive training. Assertive communication is the key. Communication is the key. Honest communication is the key. I hate even giving this answer, but you go for it. Explain to us so that we can get better.
Yeah, well, just wanted to tell you first, Dr. Ruggs, you say that I might be clairvoyant, but you're clairannoyant.
Good one.
All righty, so now...
John G. scores.
That's right. Let's get to the touche there, Hugs, not drugs. And let's just say this. Now we arrive at
He's sitting over there with his fingers in his ears, right over there. Okay, go ahead.
That's right. We'll get back to him later. So, and now we arrive at the healthiest style of communication, the honest, forthright, assertive communication style. Assertive communication respects both people. As I like to say, we know that both sides of the table are being served in this particular manner, and it's not about it's not about me blaming you. It's about you and I. It's about me and you. It's about recognizing my needs as well as your needs, and it's about my truth and your truth. And reminds me of an old prayer my second sponsor used to tell me. He said, dear God, take this relationship, make it what you would have it to be, and show us both the truth. And if we could look at that in our communication style, what is the truth for both of us, and try to look for that. Take the time to stop, observe what's going on, take a breath, observe what's going on, then pick that behavior. And treat each other with dignity and respect, with a recognition of each other's needs. But to be able to stand my ground in a way that I could honestly express without passivity, without aggressiveness, without guilt, without shame, express my needs to you and express to you what I believe your needs are in this situation, and have the willingness to listen and to reflect back what I'm hearing. And then we could explore with each other if we have that willingness and openness to be truthful.
Yeah, you're explaining why I was able to get clean and sober, because there was an unconditional love. There was assertive communication in the room for the most part. And it is truly miraculous when this happens. That's where the slogan comes in. Say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean. Go for it, buddy.
Yeah, that's assertiveness. So, instead of saying, like, you never listen, an assertive communicator says, I feel frustrated when I don't feel heard. Instead of saying, whatever you want, they say, I prefer something different. Instead of silent resentment, I need to talk to you about something that's bothering me.
In recovery, we learn boundaries, and boundaries require assertive communication. If somebody asks me to do something I can't do, I say no, without guilt, without anger, and without a speech worthy of Congress. Just the word no, N-O. Wait a minute. I'm taking my ears out. Did somebody say no? You're telling me mature adults can disagree without yelling? That sounds suspicious.
That's right, Uggs. No is a complete sentence, and we don't have to yell. You got that.
Well, tell me how assertiveness works.
Well, assertive communication works because it creates respect. It's honest. It's about trust. It's about accountability, and it creates these things: respect, honesty, trust, accountability, and emotional safety. It allows people to solve problems instead of becoming problems.
Yeah, Dr. Uggs, recovery depends on communication. Think about sponsorship. Think about meetings. Think about asking for help. Think about making amends. Every one of those requires honest communication. The disease of addiction wants isolation. Recovery wants connection. Communication is the bridge. Talk to us about this on a spiritual angle, John G.
Yeah, so, from a spiritual perspective, communication is more than exchanging information. It's the sharing of humanity. We can have knowledge, but, wisdom is what comes through the sharing of humanity. And when we speak honestly, and when we listen compassionately, when we listen attentively, when we listen to someone as if they are the most important person in the universe in that moment, because as Eddie Rickenbacker once said, because they are in that moment, we create understanding with each other. And when understanding grows, healing grows. And when healing grows, relationships strengthen. And when relationships strengthen, our recovery becomes possible. Because personal recovery depends on unity.
I think I'm starting to understand something, which is bizarre, but I think I'm trying to understand something. Passive says, I don't matter. Aggressive says, you don't matter. Passive-aggressive says, nobody knows what matters. And assertiveness says, we both matter. I think I got it. Where's Dr. Doolittle?
We're having a breakthrough with Dr. Uggs. This is amazing. Saints be praised. Yes.
This may be the smartest thing I've ever said. Don't get used to it, okay? You got any final takeaways, John G?
Well, I guess before we close, let's kind of review what we went over today. Passive communication avoids conflict, it suppresses our needs, and it creates resentment. Aggressive communication dominates others, it creates fear and resistance, and it damages relationships. Passive-aggressive communication hides feelings indirectly, creates confusion, and it prevents any kind of resolution. But assertive communication is honest, respectful, direct, effective, and I would even say humble. Humility is an understanding of the relationship between our higher power, ourselves, and others, and acting accordingly. And when we're acting accordingly, we're communicating assertively. And again, that's honest, respectful, direct, and effective. Remember, and you can say this with me, everybody, say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean. And back to you, John Barleycorn.
Well, if you're struggling today, talk to someone. Reach out. Connection is part of recovery. And if you find yourself sending a passive-aggressive text message, maybe don't do that. Well, that concludes our show. Hugs Not Drugs here doing the outro. And I just want to reiterate what everybody's been saying. Communication is the key. Recovery is an inside job. Together, we heal. Left to our own devices, we self-destruct. Until next time, this is Hugs Not Drugs podcast, wishing you peace, growth, laughter, and another day of recovery. Take us out, Harry. Love you, everybody. Take care.